Hey, this is Pastor Ricky Temple. I'm glad to tell you about a new study we're doing. I love books. I love books, I love books, I love books. And there's a book called Boundaries. And in this book, it talks about boundary conflicts. It talks about family boundaries. It talks about single boundaries. It talks about all kind of great stuff. And it's great. And it's going to be a 3-part series that I'm doing just for you. So if you missed it and you've never read this book, you need to get it. And then you need to follow me along and let me talk about it with you. It's just fun. And it's with a bunch of other people. So it's not just me. We're going to Zoom in, Facebook Lives, all this good stuff. And you can see it. You can get there. And if you weren't there live, you can come in and watch it on demand and be inspired by it. It's all good stuff. So get the book, tune in, follow me along, 3 parts on boundaries. What are boundaries? What are some boundary conflicts? How do you balance all that out? It's good stuff. 3 parts, don't you miss it. Please, please set these new boundary lines and watch it change your life. See you in the study. Again, my name is Pastor Ricky Temple, and I'm glad you're with me as we review our 3rd review of the book called Boundaries, and it's called Boundaries. There's the copy of it. I never get this kind of book, by the way. They gave me this, the staff did. I always get digital books because I can't search these. But for those of you who love paper, you paper people, how many of you are paper people? I'm curious. You like, I am shocked that you read it. You like paper. You're a professor who likes paper. Anybody else? Are you waving your hand? No, you are. All of you. How about Butler? Are you like a paper person too? Really, Catherine? All of you? What? Even you, Sheila Bishop? You? All of you people? What is this? I stand with God. I'm telling you. Even though you people, I'll bring God in this, right? Listen, you can't search this. You have to go hunt. Look what I have here. This is an OBF Kids bookmarker I snatched off the wall of the church so that I can keep up with where I'm at. It's like, oh, get out of here. Anyway, but I do have, look, I've got some books on my desk. You can't see them. This is an old book. I had to buy it because I'm doing my dissertation on burnout, right? This is the guy Frudenberger, who was the original guy who coined the term in regards to psychological burnout, and especially in the medical field. So this was a book, Burnout, How to Beat the High Cost of Success. So I'm reading this for my dissertation research anyway. But see, I have to read a book. Isn't this terrible? I had to go buy this. And look at the writing. Somebody sent this old thing to me. And it's not digital. Shameful. But I am a digital person. I love it because I can search and do what I'm doing today. Now, saying all that, let's get to it. And we're going to jump all in here today. How many of you are here today? Yep, you're jumping in. Let's get to it. We got work to do, people. Remember, write your questions down. I'll go a little while and then I'll jump in. I'm going to review a little bit so that you can see. Let's see if I can start sharing the screen. There we go. We're going to jump in here now. And there you go. And this is where we were. And I'm going to go to this. Let me see if I can, let's get that down there. We'll try to get this so I can see what I'm doing. All right, here we go. So this is the topic of the book is boundaries, when to say yes and how to say no. He says a lot of no too, and especially in that family section. I thought it was interesting. These are the topics that we've covered. If you missed them, part 1, what are boundaries? Part 2, boundary conflicts, and part 3, developing healthy boundaries. The first section on setting boundaries to improve your life was fascinating. What does a boundary look like? Boundary problems, boundaries are developed, how they're developed rather. 10 laws of boundaries. That was simple, sowing, reaping, all that great stuff. I'll read it again for you in a minute. And then common boundary myths. That was fun. That was interesting. Then we talked about boundary conflicts. He talked about boundaries in your family, friends, spouses, children, work, digital age, yourself, and God. Now, some of these I didn't go in great detail because they're too detailed. And we'd spend a whole session just on, for example, children, work, or digital age. But I wanted to give you a sample of what he said. And so you can kind of go through that section on your own and see what parts of it, speak to you. But I thought in this section, in part 2, he really started showing his personality, and especially in the latter part of the book. But when he got to talking about families and all that, it was really pretty powerful. So that was good. Now if we go back here, you can see, let's see here, chapter 1, setting boundaries. What are the problems? Trying hard isn't working. Being nice isn't working. taking responsibility for others isn't working. And he went through all of these different issues about, how boundaries are set up. I love the idea that a boundary is like a property line. I like that whole concept. That it's like, this is in my mind, an area that only belongs to me, nobody else. I love that concept, because God designed us to say, no one can get in this line unless you let them in. No one can cross this boundary. And I love the way he talks about the importance of setting limits and how not to feel guilty when you set limits, how not to feel as if you're doing something wrong when you say no. I was just sharing with someone a moment ago, a leader, and he said, I agreed to do some things I shouldn't have agreed to. I said, go back and say no. Go redraw the property lines. You can always do that. You can go back and say, I was wrong. And facing your life, facing the distortions, facing your need for boundary lines, facing your struggles with setting boundaries, being honest with yourself, getting back to God's original plan for you and not following somebody else's plan. He talked about the Garden of Eden and how God created man to be responsible, and there's certain things you should be worrying about in your life. I love the way he frees you to think about your boundaries and your future. Then this idea in chapter 2, what does a boundary look like? I thought that was great. And again, our soul is a boundary line. I talked about that just now a minute ago. And then what we are not responsible for. It's hard to say that's not my responsibility. People used to ask me sometimes, if I got $100 in my pocket and you ask for 20, am I obligated to give it to you? No. If it's, I am not, and I love the way Galatians 2:6-2 is explained, where he says that you carry the burdens of others when they can't carry it, but when it's a burden that they can carry, then they should carry it. It's not something that you should carry. And I love the way in verse 5, he says, every man should carry his own burden, his own car. I'm sorry, verse 2, every man should carry a burden to help people if they can't carry it. I always get this wrong. In verse 2 of chapter 6 of Galatians, that you should carry one another's burdens. If it's a burden that a person cannot carry, and me and this verse are gonna one day, hold on, Galatians chapter 6. Miss Bishop, remember we talked about this earlier today? Wasn't this the verse? Did you see me do this? I love it. Galatians chapter 6, verse 2, I'm gonna read it. Carry each other's burdens, okay? And in this way you fulfill the law. That's a burden that a person can't carry. Carry each other's burdens. And in all this, you fulfill the law. In verse 5, he says, for each one should carry his own load or burden. And that's something that's too big. So there's a responsibility side of this thing where you carry your own burden. And there's a responsibility where others should have to help you. But they shouldn't carry what's your responsibility. And that's the boundary line he talks about drawing, where you say to people, I'm not paying your light bill every month. I'm not paying your phone bill every month. I'm not taking over your life. And drawing those boundaries can be emotionally difficult. And there's something that happens in helping people where you feel obligated to do everything. And it's just a great chapter. So you can go back and review that. Chapter 3, we talked about the boundary problem and this whole idea of manipulation. He went through this whole great thing about people controlling you and all that good stuff and how that can be a bad thing. And the injuries that can come about when people are aggressive. You have these aggressive controllers who just manipulate you, and they're always trying to, cross your boundary lines. And he spends a lot of time, I'm really surprised in the book, talking about fathers crossing the line with their children and not allowing their children to grow up. And sometimes parents having to be careful about this idea of controlling your children. There's a delicate balance in that. And I just thought it was really helpful. As a parent, you want to be helpful, but you don't want to be a controller who dominates them and robs them of their life. And I thought that was pretty powerful. Chapter 4, how boundaries are developed. Parents set the boundaries. They're the ones where you first learn about boundaries and how all that works, and how character traits contribute to how we approach boundaries. Sinful behavior contribute to it. And that whole chapter was something you should review. These are the 10 laws of boundaries. And this kind of comes up again later in the book. And it really becomes a guiding principle for boundaries. The laws of sowing and reaping, that's pretty obvious. What you put in, you get out. Laws of responsibility, things that are your responsibility, like we talked about in Galatians chapter 2. And then the law of power. I love that because he talked about the fact that you have the power to say no. And then the law of respect. There's certain things certain boundaries you should respect. He talked about motivation. What the motivation of a person really is important to look at, because let me take a note here. He said, fear of loss of love or abandonment, people who say yes and then resent saying yes, fear losing someone's love. So sometimes he talked about you're motivated to do things because of your fear of loss, your fear of someone's anger, your fear of being lonely, your fear of losing the good, the good appearance. And so your motivation is something you have to watch, because when he talks about the law of motivation, the concern is you'll let people cross a boundary knowing that you don't agree, but you'll abandon your own vision because your motivation is to get along with them. You don't want them to be mad with you. So you say, okay, I'll go to the beach, but you don't want to go to the beach. And yeah, I'll give you money, but I don't want to give you money. I thought it was an interesting chapter. It kind of surprised me, especially when he talked about the fear of others' angers. He said, because of old hurts and poor boundaries, some people can't stand for anyone to be mad at them. So they go along with things. And I thought that was a fascinating chapter, and we talked about that. Then the law of evaluation, where he talked about, he said, you need to evaluate the effects of setting boundaries and be responsible to the other person. Deciding to set boundaries is difficult because it requires decision-making and confrontation, which in turn may cause pain to someone you love. Whenever you get to the point that you start evaluating your life, reevaluating the boundaries, he said there's going to be pain in that. It's not going to be something that's going to just be easy. And there may be some price you pay for reevaluating things, because once your motivation changes and you say, well, I'm not really motivated to make you happy anymore. I'm not motivated to not make you angry. I'm motivated to do what's best for me. And when you reevaluate and you decide you're going to do it differently, there may be a consequence. And he gets into some pretty powerful things when he talks about that. Abuse can happen. You have to become proactive and sometimes protect yourself, because there may be someone's reaction because you say no now. You can't do that. I thought that was profound. He said proactive people, on page 99 in the book, proactive people show what they love, what they want, what they purpose, and what they stand for. They become proactive instead of living in a reactive life. They look at their life and say, hey, I have to do something about this. It's a great concept. And law number 8, the law of envy. I love that. He said, envy is probably the basest emotion we have, a direct result of the fall. It was Satan's sin. The Bible says in Isaiah 14:14, I want to be like the Most High. I want to be like God. There are people that need to understand the danger of that whole process, the law of envy. And he talks about the law of activity. And I love this because it's one of my favorite texts. It's in Matthew 25, where he talks about, he said, consider the contrast in the parable of the servant who were responsible for investing their master's gold. The one who succeeded were active and assertive. This is that parable of the talents, and how you have to be active in your life and make sure you are doing something. If you want God to bless your life, you got to be active. And then, of course, the law of exposure. And the law of exposure basically is on page 103 in the book. He said the law of exposure says that your boundaries need to be made visible to others. In other words, let the truth be known. Let it all hang out. Tell them the truth. Then he goes through the myths, common boundary myths. If I set boundaries, I'm being selfish and so on. Boundaries are a sign of disobedience. If I begin setting boundaries, I will be hurt by others. And the other 4 or 5 things he says there. Then in section 2, we talked about, this way he got real specific: family, friends, spouse. I'm not going to go back through this section. Children, work, the digital age, how you spend too much time on digital devices, and then setting boundaries for yourself. And I love the part about setting boundaries for God, because that was just so incredible. And I was really surprised in this section when he started talking about families and spouses and boundaries and all these areas, that as he went through this, he really was candid. It was really honest. You can't say yes to everybody. You just can't. As we close today in our review, I want you to look at developing healthy boundaries. There's session and there's this image that I want you to see of resistance. Whenever you start saying you're going to set boundaries, you need to expect that there's going to be resistance. And he talks about outside resistance. And there's a story about a girl named Julie, and she had to manage resistance from her husband, whose reaction was angry once she drew the line and said, well, you can't hit me anymore. You can't. Once you start drawing the line and you start saying no to people, there is a potential for a very strong reaction. And that's sometimes what people are not prepared for. They're not ready for the honest, I used to yell at you, cuss you out, and do all that, but now I can't. And there's a pushback. That's why I love this image, this graphic, because it really does illustrate what I've seen. And I've seen people try hard to not be combative with their spouse, not be difficult with their spouse. They're trying to be fair and gracious, but it just doesn't work, because the reality is the person doesn't want you to change. What you see in this graphic is exactly what you sense whenever you try to change a company culture, whenever you try to change a lot of things. This is what you run into. And so resistance to boundaries is a very powerful example. And he talks about this on page 271 in the book. He talks about, after a number of weeks of therapy, Julie was beginning to understand that she was miserable because she lacked boundaries. She finally decided to take a risk and set limits with her husband. And in the end, it didn't go well in the very beginning. There was an angry reaction to it. And it became difficult for her to manage the consequences and the counter moves that her spouse made. And that's the one thing you have to kind of prepare for. Once you set boundaries, there's going to be a counter move. People may quit. People may not be your friend anymore. Are you prepared for that? And I think it's really hard sometimes to manage the anger reaction. He says on page 272, the most common resistance one gets from the outside is anger. People who get angry at others for setting boundaries I love this. People who get angry, it's on page 272, people who get angry at others for setting boundaries have a character problem. When I read that, I just froze. People who get angry with people for setting boundaries have a character problem. Self-centered, they think the world exists for them and their comfort. They see others as extensions of themselves. Then he goes on and says, angry people have a character problem. If you reinforce this character problem, it will return tomorrow and the next day and continue. I just thought that was profound. I mean, I just have never heard it put like that. Why am I angry because you want to not put up with me yelling and cussing you out? Why are you resisting that? Should I agree to that because you're angry and you disagree with me? Should I agree with you spending our money like this? Should I agree? And I'm telling you, this took me to a place of real surprise because of the candor in the book. Draw a boundary, and there is a consequence, and there may be counter moves. I thought that was pretty profound. And so then he goes into something that he says he hates talking about, physical resistance. When you see people blaming you for, where they are, he calls them blamers. He says it just can get ugly, and they're fearful of the unknown. They're fearful of what you're doing. There's a lot of things he unpacks that really made me go, wow, that's a big surprise. I want to stop right there for a second and just ask a question. How many of you have seen people get angry with you because you set a boundary? Who can raise your hand? Yeah. Anybody want to tell me a boundary you set? You can say it in as graceful a way as you can, if you want to. A boundary you set. I'll give my first one. I set a financial boundary. I stopped giving people money, some people. And once I stopped giving them money, it was over. They were like through with me. It was amazing. I didn't think it would be like that, but it was. Anybody else? You set a boundary and you ran.
I have one.
Yes, go for it.
I set a boundary of saying no and not always saying yes to people.
Yeah, you felt some counter moves when you did that?
Yes.
You did, yeah. Somebody else?
Carolyn put in the chat, setting new boundaries can cause a significant shift in relationships. Sometimes it can never be repaired.
Yeah. It's like they feel you betrayed them. You won't loan them your car. You know, they wrecked the last car and you said, you're not giving them your car again. Or they never wrecked it. You're tired of them borrowing your car. You know, here's a good one, riding them to church. I'm not going to ride you to church for the rest of your life. I'm just not. I don't want to. I want to leave when I want to leave, and I don't want to ride you to church. I want to ride by myself to church. That can sound so selfish, but is it this is the whole part of the book. Is it my responsibility to ride you to church, to the store, or wherever for the rest of my life? That I'm your private chauffeur? And he says no. I'm not obligated to do that. Let you come to my house and stay as long as you want. You don't know when to go home. I mean, there are moments where those things are really difficult to embrace. And I thought that was really interesting.
So Lorenzo says, I set some boundaries with my time and people start to feel like you changed or you tripping about something.
Yeah. Anybody else want to comment on that? Okay. Well, I just think this image, just graphic, just says it, you know, and it really speaks to how people feel when you say no, and it's really powerful. He goes on in the book and says, the first thing you need to learn is that a person who is angry at you for setting boundaries is the one with the problem. If you do not realize this, you may think you have a problem. Maintaining your boundaries is good for other people. It will help them learn what their families of origin did not teach them, to respect other people. And there's a lot of that reference he makes in the book. He said they didn't learn this as a child in their family of origin. That's what he means. No one ever told them that's not their responsibility. I even think as a church, it's okay for us to have boundaries and say, my first responsibility is to my congregation and to those that I influence, not the world, not the community. I love the community. We do a lot for the community. I do a lot, believe me, but there is a boundary. There's a day when I'm not available because I have responsibility to my staff, my church, my wife, my family, myself. And drawing those boundaries are really, really important. He goes on to say, do not let anger be a cue for you to do something. People without boundaries respond automatically to the anger of others. He says, don't allow an angry person to get you angry. Keep a loving stance while speaking the truth in love. Then he says, be prepared to use a physical distance. Now this was surprising him, physical distance and other limits that enforce consequences. Sometimes you really have to draw a line and say, we can't hang out. Because if I hang with you, you're not gonna let me set boundaries. And so we can't hang out. And that's a sad reality. Let's move to the next chapter here, chapter 16, which I think was interesting. Let me jump back here a little bit. Yeah, I want to talk about this. How to measure success with boundaries. at the end of the book, he basically says, what you should do is make sure that you live up to what you say success looks like. You need to define what you think success looks like. You don't let blamers drive your success. You don't let people resisting you drive your success. You want to sit back and say, these are the things that I feel are important to me. It took me a while to admit that I was letting the community, for example, tell me how I should spend my time, letting other people. And I learned that sometimes their definition of success and my definition of success is totally different. There were so many things that they wanted me to do and that they want me to be a part of, but I didn't define that as successful. I only did that because I felt compelled to do it. And I felt that I was supposed to. And I love the fact that the book releases me from that obligation. And I can say, no, for Ricky Temple, success is, and this is what I define as success: being healthy, or being with my wife, or being maybe working on a project that I believe in. But if I allow others to define success for me, I'll end up living my life for them, which I think is a tragic mistake. I don't think I need to live my life for everybody else. I think I need to pull myself back. And during this season of COVID and all this we've gone through, I really had a lot of time to define success. And going forward, looking at our coming year, I'm having a new thought about what success looks like for Overcoming by Faith in the next 10 years, 5 years. My view of gathering, my view of how we're going to interact, how we're going to use technology, a lot of that's evolving, and I'm allowing myself to think those things out loud. Some of you've been in the same job, the same place, doing things the same way, and you've never thought about doing it another way. You never really considered, okay, so your industry's changing, and you see that. So you're going to be off this job in 5 years or 2 years or whatever. What are the new boundaries you need to draw? What new studies? You need to go back to school. You need to, stop spending so much time on the phone and get back into some kind of tutoring program where you can get prepared for the new world. Maybe learn how to use a computer better. Maybe learn a new skill. I had to set a new boundary. I went back to school for that reason. I'm in the dissertation phase of a doctoral program. And I went back because I wanted to make Ricky better. That's what I call it. Tune up Ricky. My mind, my heart, my thought process, the way I lead you as a church, embracing this technology. You folks are different. You've set new boundaries for me. Let me give you a couple of them. People now think they join the church when they say they're a member, not when I say, or we say. People now say, oh, I'm a member. And they tell me the date they joined and everything. And I just go, really? And people now determine, just like you do with banking and you do with Amazon and you do with all the other things, that's how they view church. 72% of the people who watch us on a given week do it on demand. Only 23% watch us live. Everybody else watches it when they want to. They have drawn a boundary and said, I'm going to only watch church on Thursday night when I'm off at 7 o'clock while I'm cooking dinner. And that's what they do. And what can I do? Nothing. They drew a boundary. They're not coming on Sunday. They're coming when they want to. And people are defining what they mean. Some people have decided a lot of things that they're totally different. And churches are going to resist this. Churches are going to fight it. I'm not. I'm going to jump in. I'm telling you right now, I'm with you folks. We're going to do it in person, online, on demand, all the ways we can do it. And that means I have to draw boundaries and say, it's okay for others to draw boundaries, for me to respect their boundaries, for our church to draw new boundary lines, and for us not to be afraid. And success is going to be defined differently. And that's the last chapter of the book, success. I love that image. If you missed it, let me show it to you again. That's the whole point. He says, what is success? How to measure success? And that's do what you said you would do when you first promised. What did you say you wanted to do? Do what you said you would do when you first made the promise. And I told God, I wanted to obey your will. I wanted to reach people. And so if I have to do things a new way, it's okay. I don't have to have it that way. And so the last chapter talks about Sherry's story, which you can read on your own. She talks about a day and a life with boundaries. And you see the hand up in the air, living a successful life, victorious. There's nothing like feeling good about yourself. When you set boundaries, that's how you're going to feel. You're going to feel victorious, and I just want to say this book has helped me a lot. I was really touched by it. And so now we have time for questions for the next 25 minutes. And we're going to close this out with that as an ending conversation about boundaries. I want you to feel free to ask me anything you like about boundaries that we didn't discuss, something you read in the book you had questions about. And if you don't have the answer, Sheila Bishop does, or Diane does, and you can go for it. So what did you think about the study? What questions do you have? What areas you want me to talk about today? Could be anything you want to talk about, business, work, life, anything at all. Talk to me about boundaries. What are your questions?
While they're thinking, Pastor, we do have another comment from Carolyn. Said, new boundaries has really set me free and possibly saved my life, giving me longevity.
I believe that. So it sure helped me. It's amazing when you get up in the morning and you can live your life. I remember the first time my wife and daughter my family was not with me, and I went to a restaurant. They went off someplace on a Sunday after church, and I was by myself. So I could go to any restaurant I wanted to go to and order anything I wanted. I was confused. It was like, oh my gosh, where do I want to go? What's for me? We live our lives, especially when you got these kids, you live your life with this living for people thing. The scary thought is, where would you go on vacation? So lately with Diane, I've been saying to her, if it were me choosing, I would choose this and I would do that. That's my declaration that I have choices too. Because generally you try to get along if the kids are there and the wife's there, but no, I want to declare what I want. And it's been amazing. It's been pretty interesting to see me express myself. So anybody else have a question or a thought?
Yes, Rick, I have a thought.
Sure.
So the book is long. I will say that.
It is. It
came on Saturday and it's really thick. So I'm going to go back and reread the whole thing. So I like the summary of it. But one of the things that I realized through the study is, or through you summarizing it, is I thought I had boundaries. Mm-hmm. And I do have some, but I don't have enough. Mm-hmm. And I also found out through this summary that all boundaries are not negative boundaries. When I set positive boundaries for myself, it's not negative, and it doesn't necessarily have to be negative toward other people, but there are times where we have to really consider ourselves. So I can't wait to finish reading this book.
It can feel negative though, Sherry, to other people.
Yeah.
Because you're saying no to them.
It could.
Yeah.
It could. You gotta really be able to be expressive and let everybody know what's, because it's just like you said before, and I've always said, look, oxygen mask goes on me first, then on the child. You got to make sure that you're taking care of yourself first, because mm-hmm. if not, you're not going to have anything left to give to anyone.
I think it's Matthew 22:37. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. That the measurement for loving Diane is how much I love me. He told me to love my wife the way I love my flesh. Mm. In Ephesians chapter 4 or 5 there, 5:22, 4:22, 5:22. The idea of loving my wife the way I love, she's supposed to submit to me and all that, but the bottom line is none of that works if I'm not loving her the way Christ loved the church. That's what counterbalances that verse. He's telling you that if you're loving her the way you love yourself, it's going to be easy to follow you. But if you're not loving her the way but what if you don't love yourself? See, that's the problem. If you're not then you don't have a standard by which you measure loving a person. And so I'm really big on self-love. I think it matters. So thank you, Sherry. Great thought. Somebody else have a thought or a question about boundaries, setting boundaries in your life? You're meditating, I can tell.
So Pastor Rick,
Yes.
okay, so one thing I can share with everybody that's here, boundaries may seem like a hard thing to do, but it's a fair thing to do because you have to, my mama said, I'm gonna learn you how to treat me. I'm gonna learn you how. So, you know, we have to, especially if we have grown children and siblings even, you have to re-teach people how to treat you by setting those boundaries. And although they're going to be painful, in the end, everybody will turn out pretty good. It's like a cat, they'll land on their feet.
You know, sometimes I think there are two sides to that, Carol. And it's true that, especially with grown children, it is a new day. Figuring out how to engage them in a way that works for them and for you, and where the boundary line should be. Should I comment on everything? Do they have to do things the way I would do it? The way I would clean house, they have to clean house. I go to their house and complain, hey, you need to put this up. You do, every time you come by, you're like an inspector or somebody. You know, they get tired of you coming. Or you inspect them when they see, oh, you can't wait. Do you say that every time you see them? Every time your hair look good. How about high? Just high. Just high. Set boundaries, because you don't do that with everybody else you see. Well, some people do. They give body inspections. I hate that, by the way. They give body inspections like, look at me and tell me how good I look or bad, as if you're somehow a beauty queen or a handsome, whatever. Let me stop. But the point is, there is a point where you go, that's not, you know, my job as a parent. So learning to set new boundaries with my children has been a fascinating process. We're doing good, but there are moments you have to renegotiate. And on the downside, as I say, you can become too critical. So thank you, Carolyn. Well said. Somebody else have a boundary thought, question, or thought? We're at the end, people. We've gone through 200 and some pages. Is that a note in the chat? Somebody put something in the chat. What did I say?
One from, how does one set boundaries with a person? I'm sorry. How does one set boundaries with a person or persons who are deceased? They are still crossing some of boundaries.
You said, so when they're, say it again, Sheila, help me understand what they're saying.
How does one set boundaries with a person or persons who are deceased? They are still crossing some of the boundaries.
Emotionally, you have to let that go. You have to make a decision that was then, this is now. I can think of that in a number of ways. For example, grief, you know, and when I think about them, I get sad, I go into depression, and I start going down. I have to set a boundary and say, I can't spend my life mourning my mother every August. I just can't. I can't make August the month of grief and sorrow for me. Not me. I just can't do that. It's not because that's not what she lived for. She didn't work as hard as she did. I don't want Ricky now. You know, I do want you to think about me a little bit when I'm gone. You know what I'm saying? Don't be acting like a party or nothing, dancing all around and spinning. You know, I told y'all, if I leave here and Diane's smiling too much, call CSI. Check it out. Because he pull my body out the ground and check me out again, make sure nothing happened. Okay. You know what I'm saying? But I believe that there is a, Carolyn, I see your face. Stop it right now. Okay. I spoke my heart. Okay. All right. So anyway, so I just think there are times when I let dead people cross the boundary. I do. What they thought about me, I let that be a part of how I see myself. No, no. I refuse to do that. I'm not letting that happen. And I don't want to do that to my kids or church or anybody. I don't want you always quoting me to the next pastor. But Pastor Rick would never do that. Pastor Rick said, I hope he stopped me. Look, I do want a big picture of me in the lobby. I know you're not gonna do that. I know. Go ahead, Clary. All right, Ms. Haynes, I see your face. There will be no big picture of you, Pastor, in the lobby.
Help, Sheila Bishop, help, Sheila Bishop, help.
There'll be no, remember me. That's what it'll say right on the caption. But at the end of the day, I don't think that's fair. I don't. I'm teasing. I really don't think it's fair. I think people should be able to move on with their life. You can have healthy memories. I think that's healthy. I think it's good that we remember our forefathers. I think that's great. I think Black History Month, Hispanic Month, even they all get high and go to church. What's that date in Savannah?
St. Patrick's.
St. Patrick's Day. Yeah. That
They go to church first, then they get high.
I'm sorry, but all of that, I'm for it. I'm not, I can't put on that skirt, but I'm for them celebrating and being happy about their heritage. I just think the challenge is if you go too far in the wrong direction. So let me get off that while I'm safe.
There's a question on Facebook Live.
What is that?
Someone said, I set difficult boundaries that resulted in a full-fledged resistance. Why is so much pain associated with it when you know that your boundary is appropriate?
Because appropriate boundaries are painful. That is just the short and long of it. It's painful. Some people don't like limits. I used to get criticized because I won't let church be but so long. He just quenched the spirit. He just stopped everything. An hour and a half on the dot. Goodbye. See y'all later. They said, keep on going. Just don't worry about that. I say, okay, that's why you have 10 people at your church. I'm not doing that. And I know that boundaries sometimes bother people. They don't want you to set boundaries in any way. For them, they want to be free. People used to get upset when I would set boundaries, like when I'm preaching. I don't mind you saying amen, but not every 2 seconds. Come on now, talk with me. Say it again. You're right. That's right. My mama said that too. My daddy did. I said, hey, wait, I work alone. I don't need that much help. I don't mind help. But they thought they didn't like that boundary. I gave off this atmosphere. I would stop and say something. And some people felt that was, too much of a boundary, but I'm not here. You don't do that in class. Teacher says something, you don't go, that's right, 2 times 2, 5, 4, that's 8, now 16, that's 32. You don't do that. There's a time for that. I'm not against it. I'm not against interaction. I'm not against energy, but I'm trying to make a point and you don't know the point because you didn't do these sermon notes with me. Please stop talking. I'm trying to speak. This is crazy. I have to even say this. I think there's a moment where people don't like boundaries and they don't want you to tell them what they can't do, but that's not what the Bible said. Humble yourself under the mighty hand of God that he may exalt you. There's a time to speak. There's a time to be quiet. I think there's a right way and a wrong way. There's a time to shout, scream, fall out, yell back at the preacher. Talk it, say it, boy. That's good. Then there's a time to be quiet. So I think knowing how to walk in and out of those boundary lines is really important. And that's all about maturity. Paying attention to where you are, paying attention to what everybody else is doing, and trying to flow in the river with everybody. And some people don't like that. Everywhere they go, they want to cross all the boundary lines. They want to draw all the boundary lines. And I think that's unhealthy.
We do have another comment. Says, what I've learned from experience is when people continually violate your boundaries, the best thing to do is separate yourself. Sometimes this helps them to understand the error and to change. Other times it doesn't. But at the end of the day, you're able to move forward with peace of mind, free from abuse.
I'm going to tell you something I think is true. I understand that in principle. When he says that in the book, what that person just said, but here's the truth. There are people who are boundary violators. and they will be that all their life. There are some children that will always violate your boundaries. There's some people. It's just, and I think sometimes we need to have a boundary violator in our life. Now, this may sound strange. There are people I believe God sends to the church to bug me on purpose. That's why they came. And God allowed them to come because they need to deal with, they need to have that exchange. We need to have that moment of, hey, wait, you can't do that. Yes, you can. That little tug of war. That's where they grow. And I've had people that I think are not easy people to pastor, but God sent them there for me to pastor. And I think in your family, there's a cousin, a nephew, a son, a daughter, a husband, a wife. Some women are hard to be married to now. They're difficult. They're not easy to date. It's a rough ride. It's like riding on a rodeo horse. You buck a few times. I mean, she'll throw you off. And there's some guys, but they're good people. What I don't want to say here is if a person crosses your boundary and they're difficult, then we need to throw them all away. We need to understand that Jesus puts up with us. What's it like to, how often have you crossed the boundary and God helped you? How many times has he bailed you out financially? How many times he forgave you because you didn't say something right? So I think it's all about embracing the reality that we want to set boundaries, but people just are not always going to do it right. And I don't want to give the idea that everybody that, crosses the boundary, we get rid of them. Because God be done got rid of me. Because I know I have messed up a time or two. So next question or thought about boundaries. See, I just let the clock tick, 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 tick. Who's thinking? Dan, you smiling. What you thinking about over there? No? Did you like what I just said, Ms. Temple? What's your comment on that? People like to hear what you think about what I said. They want to hear your thoughts about this series. Since you asked me, she's the one who asked me to do this book, by the way. She's the one who brought this book to my mind, even though I had read it before. But she said, why don't you do boundaries? But she didn't tell me it's 200 and how many pages? 200.
Well, you happened to mention the book.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And you mentioned the book again during one of your sermons, and I said, and you were talking about the principles in boundary, and I said that would be a good book review. So, that was why I said, and Pastor can handle it. He can take it.
And just read the parts you like. Don't read the whole thing. Read, go to the chapters that speak to you. Tell me about boundaries, Nine, for us. What kind of boundaries have you drawn from me? They like to know that.
Oh, what kind of boundaries for you?
Yeah, have you drawn from me?
Oh my goodness.
Come on, be honest.
Well,
can I pray for you first? Lord, help her don't say anything bad.
I'm trying to funnel my words. Funnel words.
No, be honest. Just speak it out. Speak it out.
Of course, the first thing that comes to my mind is relationship boundaries. In that, I think even before we got married, I told you that my personal pet peeve is, you could tell me anything. You could always just tell me the truth. If you lie to me, I have a hard time. I forgive people who lie, but I really struggle with that. That's one of my main pet peeves. So my boundary was just tell me the truth,
But that's not juicy enough.
Oh, and I'm getting to some more. Okay, and then you got to always tell me the truth. I cannot deal with, where, it's like all men cheat, all men do this, all men. It's like, that's the all men testimony of other people that are not my testimony. So, boundaries, I'm not fighting nobody for no man and all that. So
you're saying as handsome as I am, you're not fighting for me. That's what you're saying.
No, you need to the boundaries are you set your ground rules yourself.
Okay.
I don't have to come in and do nothing. It's like, no, so certain boundaries, I said, and even in our relationship, saying this is where I am, this is how I process certain boundary. It's like, don't use, stupid, foolish, crazy woman, you know,
Okay,
got
you don't like
boundaries.
those words. Can't say those words. Stupid.
No,
crazy
no.
woman.
You can
Can't
say that
say
about
those
other
words.
people, but you can't, you know.
I don't use that word anyway, but let me give mine on you. You ready? This will be fun. You ready? Here's something a boundary I set. We don't say this. Happy wife, happy life. I do not like that test. I don't ever, happy me too, not just happy you. That's got to be both of us happy, not just some happy wife. That's why on Valentine's Day, my personal view is, where's my flower? I need a candle or something. I'm sorry, give me, I don't know, a card or something. And rhyme the words. I love you when I think of you. You, when I see you, I don't know what to do. Say something like anything to make you. Anyway, how much time I got? I'm running out of time. All right, so those are some boundaries. I got to be happy too. I mean, I think it's selfish in a relationship to be just one-sided. That's why I like the church. You know, I have a boundary for the church. You know, it's like, look, I'm not going to come here if you don't come. I'm staying home too. I'm not going to be the only miserable person. I feel that, you know, I feel that if I'm honest, if I tell the truth about where I am, how I feel, and I do that in our marriage, you know, we really have some honest conversations, and those conversations really, I think, help, because I feel like I know what she wants, and the church knows where I am, and all that kind of helps us. So I don't lie. I really don't. I tell the truth. I set some boundaries around those things. So having said all that, I'll let you take the next 5 minutes, and we're going to pray and let you go. We got 5 minutes now. So this is it, the last of the series. And we're going to do the next book. I'll let you know when. We'll do that other book later, but I might do one on habits. That's what I'm thinking about. I think I told you the guy's name is Duhigg. It's called The Power of Habits, Duhigg, I think that's how you say his name, The Power of Habits, but that's down the road. So right now, anybody else have a question about this book before we close out? Or a comment, anything? We're done. 3 minutes. I'm clocking out. Drawing a boundary. That's it. He's gone, ghost. Anybody at all? Did you enjoy this? Tell me what you liked about it. Somebody else gonna tell me what you liked? Anybody want to tell me something you liked about it?
I'll comment. Speaking of boundaries, I never comment, so this is a groundbreaker for me. So first of all, just from this book, my husband and I, we had an issue with our daughter, and we've had it for months, and we just kept saying we're going to talk to her about it, but honestly, we were both afraid to talk to her. So he'll say, "I'll do it tomorrow," and I'll do it. And so we went back and forth for quite a while. Then I started reading the book, and one of the things it said was, people have no idea what you're thinking, so you have to tell them. So we went back and forth for another couple of days, and then he talked to her, and I said, "Well, did you tell her?" He's like, "Well, no, I didn't tell her." So I said, "Well, we're going to do it right now, because literally we're making ourselves sick because we were afraid to talk to our own daughter." But basically there were like 3 different things. And honestly, one of the things she didn't even realize. So I think that's one of the issues, that maybe some people don't realize that they're doing certain things. But we started out with, "We love you. We were really afraid to talk to you about this," you know, and so we lovingly told her what we wanted to tell her. And she took it so much better than we thought, you know, and we gave her a few hours to digest everything that we said, you know, because we honestly had like 3 different issues, but one, she was clueless that was even going on. But the bottom line is, it worked out really well. So I think, like the book said, you have to tell people what's on your mind, but we struggled just getting it out, you know. And I said to her, I don't know why we're afraid to talk to our own child, you know.
You know, anyway. that Clarissa, that is exactly what happens with these adult children. You become worried about.
We have no boundaries with our children or grandchildren. So that's
yeah. And I think establishing those boundaries helps them. A guy told me something the other day about his child being spoiled. I said, remember, he's going to be the father to somebody. He's going to be married to somebody. So help your future daughter-in-law. Help your grandchildren by setting boundaries. Because if you don't tell them, my mom used to say, the police are going to have to tell them, or somebody else is going to have to tell them on a job or some other place. And you want me to speak the truth to you in love, like Ephesians says. Let me tell you.
So we
And-
called her a couple of hours later and she was good. And then we went to see her actually last weekend and she was still good. And they're coming tomorrow. So we're all good.
That's great. I think it's a great crossing. I'm happy for you. And we understand it. We get it. You know, it's part of this journey. You folks are amazing. I think is that all the comments before we go, before I pray? Okay. All of you on Facebook, thanks for being with us. It's been a joy to have you. And I'm going to pray. I'm going to hang around with the hang-arounders for a few minutes. And they may have a few other things to ask me. But I really appreciate the fact that you've allowed me to take you through this book and kind of hammer through. I've kind of skipped over some things. There's just too much to talk about. And all the stories are great. And I didn't feel like I needed to read them all. I just mentioned a few of them to you. But I pray that you would take hold of this truth and apply it to your life. Father, I thank you for the opportunity to share with your people today. I thank you for this book. I thank you for these wonderful men who put this together. I pray that you would help us to set boundaries in our lives and not be afraid to draw boundaries, and help us to embrace the truth. In your name we pray. Amen. It's been a joy. Thank you for being with me. And I'll see you next time on my book review. I'm going to try to do a couple of 3 of these a year. I think it's really cool. If you want to see more, you go to rickytemple.com. That's RICKY temple.com. And you can see Read with the Pastor. I've got some books up there that I didn't mention today. One is called Foresight, which will probably be a book for the month of November, I think, the way I'm thinking. So you can go ahead and jump in there, or October, I'm sorry. You can go in, that's October's book, I'm sorry. So if you want to jump ahead, I always put a video up as well. So if you want to see what books I'm reading, go to rickytemple.com, click on, like I said, Read with the Pastor. And I don't know if they put that on the main web. Is that on the main web page too, Di? Is it? I don't think it is. No, if it's not, we need to put that there so they can read with me on the main church webpage. And see what books I'm reading. And it's all kind of great stuff on the website. I put all my loose stuff and all the stuff I do. And if you want to nose around, be nosy, nose around on there. It tells you what my doctoral program I was in. It shows you what classes I took, what books we had in each class. I put all that up there, real geeky. I got something on articles, all kind of great things. So just scroll around if you want to, but you can go on and check out Read with the Pastor. So enough said, goodbye. Thank you. Hang-arounders, hang around. The rest of y'all take care. Bye-bye. Well, I hope you were blessed by the whole series on boundaries. It really does bring life to you when you think about how important it is to live within the fences of wisdom. And that's what boundary lines are. They're wise lines you draw around your life, your family, your money, your time, your emotions. It's just helpful. It's liberating to know that you're not responsible for everybody. So let me pray for you. Father, I pray this whole series has helped lift the hearts and minds of your people to a place where they understand where their boundary lines are. I pray that they would be encouraged to not just embrace their life, but teach others how to embrace their lives. And sometimes we help people take responsibility for their lives by refusing to take over their life. What they sow, they reap. And so I give you all the praise and glory for the wisdom and the strength this series has brought to us, and may it be life-changing forever. In Jesus' name, amen. Hey, listen, if you missed the series, go back, get all 3 parts of it, listen to it, read the book, follow me along, listen to the dialogue, the questions, the answers. The dialogue is fun. It's just good stuff. So live in the boundaries, and remember, your life is really in your hand. God gave it to you. Take responsibility, draw some boundary lines around it. See you next time for another study. My name is Pastor Ricky Temple. Have a great day.